And good evening. Linux is awesome, everybody. Just remember that. No matter what difficulties you have, it doesn't matter the operating system. So welcome. Welcome all. So all the audio checks didn't happen properly. My fault. And we're going to just kind of wing it from here. So welcome to Biddle. This is instead of a high rent Biddle, looks like this one's going to be a low rent Biddle because hey, that's what happens sometimes. How is everybody? Excellent. So we're going to set up to have a talk around the virtual water cooler. Anything that is Linux tech, open source related is on the table for discussion. I want to make it so it's as much you, the community, and least me as possible, because I gotta come down. I gotta come down a little bit before I really start talking too much. So I do want to thank Rocco for starting the Biddle community. I want to thank Eric for all his support and Zoom, although I screwed it up again, Eric. So you're welcome for messing everything up. Yeah, so that's all me. I couldn't get, like, Zoom just did this thing on me this evening, and actually it's par for the course how the last 2 hours have been going. So I'll just tell everyone. I broke my mother's wheelchair, and I can't fix it until tomorrow. So I'm in big trouble. Anyway, well, it's just the break. Now, the whole thing, like, she can still sit in it. She just can't put it in park, which is very dangerous for her. Anyone who's spent any time in a wheelchair, I don't know if anyone here has. Really? Okay, well, go ahead and keep talking, everybody. So I will. Yep. So right now it looks like it is. It decided it would stop listening because everything was fine, and I muted the. Go ahead and keep talking. Can someone talk, please? That's not it. How about
Don't
now?
look now, but there's a cat right next to you.
Okay, I think
Just walked right past all my computer stuff, that little brat, and almost knocked over my beer.
Okay.
Lamer says now he can hear everybody.
Okay, good. So Lamer, this is also my fault apparently.
No, I can't.
Yeah, I guess so. We're good now.
I'll blame Zoom anyway.
All right. So thank you everyone for having more skill than me in the community and telling me what to do, Steve.
Been there, done that. So
Yeah. So anyway, yep, I broke my mom's wheelchair and her brake on the left side, right side. So there we go. I was trying to tighten it up for her because she asked for it, and then I ended up just like snapping the bolt right off. So there we go.
2 words: wheel chocks.
Right. She gave me this look. Now, she's in her 70s. She's like a World War II survivor, and she's gone through like all kinds of awful things in her life. And she looks at me. She says, "Well, how am I supposed to stop my wheelchair?" And I go, tomorrow. So we're going to do a sudo zipper dup tomorrow and fix your wheelchair with a new package coming down. So actually, I didn't say it like that to her. So has anybody done anything cool in Linux in the last week? Anything exciting you want to share?
trying to test out peppermint. I'm not.
Oh wow!
Not that it's
Sounds
not
good.
bad. I'm just having problems with my system, one of my IC docks.
Cool. What's so when you say you have a problem, what exactly do you mean?
I was able to install it. I have a 4-bay IC dock.
Okay.
Installed fine. I even rebooted it a couple of times. It would boot back in, and then I left it sit for a couple of days and try to get back in. Now I get that you need to have an OS installed,
Oh.
And then I'll move the IC dock and I'll switch it. It's not the bay. I don't know what happened with the SSD. So
Is that the IC dock that gets SSD stuck in it? The ones that Ryan and
yeah, it's the 4-bay one. The casing's kind of metal, but everything internal is plastic. And if you push it in too hard or something like that, trying to push and pop the SSD out can be trying. And usually, I've learned that once I get something installed, I don't pop anything out. So I'm kind of stymied why it's not booting up. So I just haven't had time to play anymore with it.
So did you report any bugs on it then, saying what the issue was, or are you just kind of stuck right now?
Well, I'm kind of stuck because I don't think it's the Peppermint install. I think something with the IC dock. I might just have to pull it out and read it. I tried booting in a live USB, and it doesn't see the SSD, and then the BIOS doesn't see it either.
Well, stymie is a great word, and I'm glad you used it. Because I was also stymied just a little bit ago. So there we go. It's like we're brothers, except we never met each other's parents. So there we go.
Brother from another mother.
Maybe father too. I can't say for sure. Anybody else have anything cool in Linux they want to share? Colin probably did something cool.
Oh, well, I was still working on my distro, so I was making some adjustments to that and trying to perfect it a little bit. And I've been doing bash scripts as well. So I had my own little bash script to install Flatpaks and Plex server and that. So all you do is just press the magic number or the magic letter, and the magic happens. So
if I may interrupt for 1 second, I want to.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody knows this guy over in the corner somewhere. If he's in the corner, I think he's joining us for one of the very first times live. White Chocolate.
White Chocolate. It's true. He's joining for the first time.
Can you hear me?
Welcome, Terry.
I can hear you. Oh, his name's Terry, not White Chocolate.
Yeah, it's Terry.
Oh, okay.
Terry,
well,
welcome.
Terry Chocolate.
Terry Chocolate.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Welcome.
Well, I'm really glad he could be here. It's a great first night for you, you know, cuz. So Colin, this one button deployment of now are you calling this a Colin distro now, or is that where we're at with it?
No. I'm using that's the one Esnix is.
Okay.
I'm not a distro maker. I'm not a bash script expert. I'm not expert at anything. I just hack on other people's stuff or whatever you want to call it, or just mess with other people's stuff. But I find it enjoyable to be able to write my own scripts and put in my own commands, and then you can just press a number or a letter and away it goes. So I find that it gives you a sense of, I don't know, enjoyment or satisfaction to be able to write something in a document, and then it can magically do all this stuff. So it becomes addictive after a little while, I must say, and I quite enjoy it. So it's interesting.
That is cool. But it's something that.
When do we get to explore Colin OS?
Yeah. Or is it PCTLC OS? This way it's all acronyms.
PCTLC, actually. So I'm going to be making a video on that. I thought I'd do a video on Deepin first because I was slightly impressed with Deepin. So I was doing that today. I've only just almost finished it just before this. So I'm still working on it. So I'm doing a whole heap of things. It just never stops. There's always something to do. There's never enough time.
This is true. We're very fortunate that we have so many real neat things we can play with, especially like in software, open source software. I mean, has anyone here, they lived through the BBS era? Does anybody besides me live through the BBS era and do BBSing? Okay, so Eric, I know.
Yeah, a little bit.
Peter a little bit. I'm assuming Eric's put his hands up because he seems like he's kind of an old soul like that. But I could be wrong. But like going from, starting a download at like, 9 o'clock at night or whatever, and hoping that it didn't fail when you woke up in the morning to now that you can download and build and share an entire operating system. I think when you look at that, how it's changed, the 90s was 10 years ago? The last 10 years, it's amazing. 30 years. So anyway, well, that's exciting. Well, I hope that that someday when PCTLC OS is ready for us to try, we can actually give it an exploration here on the old Biddle, or whatever it is we end up calling it.
Well, I've got to have a place to put it. Can you put things on GitHub to download, or you can't do or you have to do like a SourceForge or something like that to download
an ISO?
No, you can do GitHub.
I could put on. You can do GitHub.
Yeah.
Because I've got a GitHub account, so I could put my scripts on there too, couldn't I?
Yeah.
Put my script on
Share
GitHub
them to anybody.
Yeah.
I've made one for Arch and I've made one for Debian Ubuntu. So that's if people want to use it, but it's Flatpak install and stuff. So, but it's good fun.
It's good fun.
It gives you a sense of power, like you press a button. I did that. Bang, it happens.
So I'm curious now, like, because there's different levels of users and whatnot. So Linux, different Linux levels, let's call it, different open source Linux levels. So to roll your own distro, that's got to be, I mean, you got to be like, wizard level at this point, right? I'm not really sure what that's called.
No, it's not, because Esnick's done all the hard work. I'm just changing a few little things that he did. You still got to work out how to put your logos and stuff in there or whatever. But I mean, but he's written all the scripts and everything that makes it. I'm just, just tweaking it a little bit to my liking.
All right.
That's all.
Well, but in all fairness, you're not like a Bilbo Baggins Linux user. You're something well beyond that. So I just don't know what that was called. Gray wizard, maybe? You're not a white wizard yet. You're a gray wizard.
Just call me Harry.
Harry. Well, nonetheless, it's very cool. I think it's really awesome that you're experimenting with this. And also, there's a Lorelite is also new to the. I don't recall that name before. I was just frantically hitting accept for everybody, even if I didn't know their names. So welcome. I appreciate you joining the stream. I hope you have some fun tonight, because that's what it's all about. Just let's have some fun and talk nerdy nonsense.
No, Laurel Light has been with us quite a few times, actually.
It's Kai.
Oh, well, I guess I'm an idiot. Well, there we go. Wasn't paying attention. Let's mark that. We'll put that in the why Steve should probably be host bucket. So, well, right. So Deepin, without dilly-dallying too long, Deepin was the distribution exploration of the week. Now, I downloaded mine. I downloaded last Sunday is when I downloaded. I started playing with it at that time. And I ran into quite a few troubles. But before I get into that, we did have a straw poll that Eris put out there. So we had 9% said Deepin is amazing. The deeper I go, the more I love it. 14% said Deepin is okay. 5%, it should be slightly more than that now, says I've thrown it in at the deep end and I want to get out. And I think that was a very funny way of saying it. 19% said I'm interested in trying Deepin. Almost 30% said I don't have time this week, which is understandable. It's been a busy week. 19% said I'm not interested in doing any of the explorations, and 5% said other, and reply and explain. So I don't know if they did. I don't know if we had any explanations. But anyway, very exciting. I expect a little bit higher praise on the Deepin, but maybe just because people didn't have time or weren't really interested in it. So, so the rules for this this discussion is we're going to talk about the different aspects of the operating system and what our experiences were in using it. So this discussion should be objective and constructive. Let's not give non-objective, harsh opinions that would just hurt somebody's feelings. But let's make sure if it's something you don't like about it, say what you didn't like about it specifically and what they could do to improve that little bit that they didn't like. We'd like to make sure that everyone can benefit from the conversation and to minimize how much time I talk. So we want to highlight the positives and not ignore the lowlights of the project. And remember that this is a labor of love of somebody, and let's not poo-poo on it. And yes, I like the term poo-poo. So a little bit about Deepin. This distribution began in 2004, which I did not know until after doing a little digging on it. It was called, I think I'm saying this correct, High-Weed Linux, as opposed to low-weed or cheap-weed. In 2011, the development team behind Deepin established a company named Deepin Technology to support the commercial development of the operating system. The company received business investments at the year that it was founded. The Deepin Technology joined Linux Foundation in 2015. and it features its own desktop environment called Deepin DE, or DDE for short. It's written in Qt or Qt, depending on how you what your proclivity is on that. The distribution also maintains their own window manager. It's a fork of Kwin called DDE Kwin. The desktop environment was described as the single most beautiful desktop on the market by Jack Wallen, who I have no idea who he is, from Tech Republic. DDE is also available in the software repositories for Fedora, and there's also Ubuntu DDE, and Manjaro has a version of Deepin as well. Those are community-supported distributions that feature the Deepin desktop environment and some of the Deepin applications. So there was basically one option, the Deepin desktop environment. I didn't see another one unless somebody saw if there was another option. I didn't see it. So the installer, I tried installing it on actual hardware initially, and I got a reoccurring boot. So maybe the hardware was too old. So I was forced to, okay, so it wasn't just me. So I'm not the only bird that flew over that coop. All right, great. But it installed in virtual machine just fine after I gave it all the storage space that it wanted. So, thoughts on the installation process?
Well, it was Nate, by the end of last week's show, I had it installed no problem on hardware on an old machine.
Huh. So maybe it was me. I wonder if I did something wrong.
Well, in my case, it was the machine.
Okay.
Because I had a desktop. I don't know. It had, something that my brother let me use to try to put Deepin on it, and it just kept going all these error messages, doing this thing, and didn't work. Popped out the USB, slapped it into my my laptop here, and boom, no problems with the installation. So then I tried putting Mint on that same desktop just to see if it was desktop, and it was a desktop, so Mint wouldn't even install on it. So I got Mint installing on a different one over here just to test.
Yeah, definitely hardware.
Yep, definitely hardware.
Okay.
So wasn't Deepin's fault. It is still updating right now, so I haven't really got to play with it.
Okay. But so you had no problems outside of that one desktop. You didn't have any installation issues. Now, Jinda, you said you had some installation troubles.
Yeah, in the BIOS, if I went into the BIOS where it had operating system installed, it had some Chinese writing in it. Which I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying that I don't know what it is, and I'm assuming that's what did it. I guess I can delete it, but I thought it was kind of annoying.
Right, it's understandable. Did anybody else have any issues getting it installed initially?
No, it worked on my. It's okay. It worked on my Dell XPS laptop. No problem. Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, I installed it on, which has now kind of become my testing laptop, my son's old G73 Asus. It installed really well, and I'll tell you, I can just probably reinstall it and reinstall it and look at that installer all day long. It's one of the most good-looking installers ever that I've ever seen, and I had no issues with it installing. It was not that long. I know when I tried it a few months back on a different HP laptop, it seemed to take a lot longer to install. Or I might be getting that confused with Ubuntu DDE, because I know that took a long time to install. But,
okay. Anybody else have anything on the installation process they want to share with the class?
I installed it on my Toshiba laptop, which has an NVIDIA Optimus. So it did give me the option to install NVIDIA during install. It's got a little box next to the encrypt disk option as well. So I chose to install the NVIDIA there. And I also did an advanced install and created my own partitions just to see how the installer handled that situation, which was fairly simple. And yeah, I agree with Steve. It's a really nice looking installer. The only problem I found was when you click on the partitions, there's a little tiny thing that you've got to click on to get the options of what you want to choose for the partition itself, which is not really obvious. So that was, I think they could make that a little bit more obvious, I think. But besides that, It was pretty flawless. I did it in VirtualBox and also did it on real hardware and worked out pretty good either way.
Yeah, I did it as a dual boot as well. And I'm trying to remember, I'm trying to remember like what you just described. And I don't remember it being, it was certainly different. I mean, everything they do is different, which is, you know, I think maybe one of the most interesting parts about the distro itself is that so many other things are derivative in Linux in general. It's like you have these sort of cornerstone pillars of you know, Plasma and GNOME, and like and everybody sort of borrows from those, even if they're coming up with different things. And it just seems like Deepin's done everything from scratch. So
well, I'm not sure whether they've done that or whether they're actually using the same as Pop! OS and Elementary, or it's a spin-off of that, because it looks very similar. I'm not sure, or it's their own. It could be their own
installer. Or?
Yeah.
No, it's. I mean, it's different. I mean, as far as looks, it might be their custom version of it.
No, it's different. No, it must be their own, because I'm thinking of something else. Sorry. Yeah, you're right, Eric. It's got to be their own.
I did. I mean, it's similar enough that I wasn't confused in what I was doing. I had to pick the right partition for my root, but beyond that, you know, it just sort of knew where the EFI partition was. It knew where the swap file was, knew where all that sort of stuff was. And yeah, I actually, when I'm never sure of a distribution, I was hesitant to click that, you know, install, because I'm thinking back 5 years ago or longer, when it wasn't unheard of for an installer to have a bad day and blow up a disk or two. So no, it went well. It was fairly quick from what I can remember. But a few minutes, and yeah, but doing the partitioning was probably what took the longest.
Yeah.
So did you find the partition scheme a little peculiar?
You only get that really weird. So if you install it and let it take over the whole disk, then it does. Yes, it has a very odd scheme where it makes several partitions and all of this, that, and the other. But that's what I was saying. So I wasn't clear enough in saying that, but on my dual boot system, I gave it one partition for the root, and it didn't like subdivide it in any way. Like it just did a normal install as you would expect.
I just say Medic.
But I've seen where if you give it an entire disk, it does, you know, it creates, I think, like 5 or 6 different partitions. So it's a little odd.
Yeah, they're all what can you say, backup partitions and so forth. I was watching Derek from DistroTube. He was showing that made an enormous amount of partitions for itself when you do a full install. It's probably more than Windows.
I just thought it was just odd. I mean, whatever. But it just seemed excessive. You know, I mean, I think the way things have been going, at least in my Linux experience, has been we've gone from having more partitions to less with most distributions. You know, having separate root and home was very common with a swap. Then swap kind of went away, sort of like a swap file, and then now you very often see one, like for Btrfs partition or whatever, and then you have a swap file. Or now the whole ZRAM swap thing, that's a whole another bailiwick of craziness. So there's not even a swap file, and unless you want to hibernate, and then in which case that's not going to work. But I find that very, very interesting, and this is going completely the opposite direction. I'm sure they have their valid reasons for it. I just don't know what those are.
Well, you ever see a Cloud Ready, the Chromium OS partition scheme?
Nope.
And it's based on, I think, what a while back I was talking with Adam about it. And it's really it's 100 partitions, got little partitions all over the place.
I know Fedora does the same thing. Like if you give Fedora an entire disk, it can do the same thing. It wants to create 3 or 4 different partitions. It wants to put home in a separate partition. It wants to put, some things in separate. And that used to be because disks just weren't large enough to be a single large root partition. Back in the day, you'd have an opt disk or a, home disk or a, it's kind of it. So it feels a little old fashioned, but there may be some good reasons. Who knows?
So just to expand on that. Oh, so go ahead, Colin.
No, go on, Eris. You were first.
Okay. Just to expand on that, for Fedora, I know that if you you give it some empty space, like in the drive, it'll do all the partitions by itself. You don't need to give it the whole disk. You just have to like have some big space for it to handle.
I'm just curious if you did the advanced partition scheme with Deepin, would you still need the 60 gig that they recommend, or would you get away with a smaller amount?
That's a good question, because it used to be that there was a check before you even got to that point.
That's still there.
Yeah. I tried doing 30, I think, or 35. It wouldn't let me go any further. It says like you must have 65 or something.
Even with advanced?
You can't go forward. You can't click next. It says like white side out or something like that.
They put the check. I think the check's a little too early, honestly, because if you are doing a dual boot, and let's say it doesn't see that disk, or I don't know. That's a good question, because what if you want your root partition to be on a separate disk than the disk it thinks it's going to use, or something like that? You'd have to. I guess I'd have to play around to test it out, but yeah, they put that check for 60. I think it's 60 or 64 gigs pretty early on in the process.
I don't remember seeing that check, to be honest.
How much did you give it?
80 gig.
Oh, well then, that's fine.
It only comes up if you have less than
64.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's why I didn't see it. Yeah.
So like if you, I don't know what you do for your virtual machines, but normally I think most people are like 15, 20 gigs of space. And depending on what type of virtual manager you're using, you're either dedicating it dynamically or statically. So like VirtualBox, I'll just throw 67. I think I did 70, and it doesn't use all that space at one time. It just uses it as it needs it. But on, I guess, to the operating system, it sees it as a full 64 or 70 gigs. But if you were to use like QEMU or something like that, I know, at least the way I've used it in the past, it'll allocate all that disk space. So for one virtual machine, you've eaten up a good chunk of space. So,
I was thinking to dovetail what you said earlier, Eric. Sometimes the older file systems couldn't be as large either, so you had to partition things out to be able to handle.
Right.
So that was also an issue at one time as well.
Yep.
Which is exciting. We have to even think about that anymore.
I know. Things have become much easier.
Yes, they have. Now, White Chocolate, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to throw in there on if you tried it, if you have anything you want to contribute as far as the installation process or thoughts on it.
I didn't get a chance to try it.
Oh, no worries. Then you're Mr. I Can Ask Questions. Now, I did love the that they had the slideshow they had there at the at the end, but they also could go into my favorite mode, which is like verbose, showing you everything it's doing in the background. I like to see what the system's doing. But so that was pretty cool.
I think an installer can be a pretty boring thing, and I remember I made a video, a year and a half ago about just about the installer, just to say like, look, most people don't care about the installer because they never see it, or if they see it once. Most normal people, but if you're distro hopping, obviously you can compare and contrast. And I made that video just to say like, look at this, like somebody cared enough about this to like make it this nice, to put that much thought into it, to make it enticing, to make it like you can't wait. Okay, let's get through this. I want to get in there and see what this is all about, as opposed to a lot of installers that are just sort of, are what they are. So again, it all goes back to that, that idea that they just they didn't look at what there was. They just sort of said, we're going to do what we think makes sense. And it's taken them quite a while to get there. But I think in using it for the last week or so, and I know we'll get into more details, but I'm not finding those little paper cuts and those problems that I used to find every time I took a look at it. Like, I'm able to just use it. And I have a small list of like very nitpicky things, but by and large, like, it is very usable now.
So there's this idea, and we're only doing explorations here. I just interrupted myself, but there's this idea that there's different user experiences. There's those that, the day one experience. How is that? Then there's the repeat day experience. How does the distribution hold up over a period of, weeks, months, or years, potentially? So that's something that I think that we won't probably address here unless someone has some experience with that. But it's interesting to see then how over time, if a distribution starts to come a little bit wonky. I know that with back in my Mandrake Linux days, the distribution was like the first month was a little bit of a wild ride, and then months 2 to like 9 were great, and then when they get ready to release the next distribution, things started to get a little rough again. Kind of like you needed a tune-up on your car, and so when the new release came out, it was like a cycle, where when they aged, the distribution aged, it just became more weird. Like, it just started behaving oddly. Not always, but just like every once in a while, just something would happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's to compare it. I mean, that's my experience with Windows forever, is that Windows is usually pretty usable for some period of time, and then if you have a installation of Windows that lasts longer than 2 years or something, it's going to really, it just gets cruft. There's too much junk. There's too much startup, activity in the background, services running, whatever, that just slows things down. And I think maybe Linux is a little less susceptible to that, but probably, like you're saying, maybe you were seeing that as well.
That was 10 plus years ago. So
yeah.
But
well, think of the hardware too back then. I mean, how much the difference between a fragmented disk and a defragmented disk, like, it was such an amazing difference, that at least it felt so much faster and more performant. And now we're using hardware that's so fast. If you're using an SSD, you just don't feel the slowdowns like you used to, where you were already so close to it being so slow and hard to use, and like it just needed a little help, and it went, ooh, so now I don't know, I just don't sense that stuff anymore. I've got the installation of Ubuntu I'm on my third upgrade, update, whatever, between releases, and in the past that would have been unheard of. Like, there's no way I could have survived those continued updates to have it, still be usable, and it's perfectly fine. So
yeah, I would say probably for the first decade or so of using Linux, I very rarely did the update mechanism. I always used the was it nuke and pave model of updating, with a separate home partition. It was kind of critical.
Yep.
All right, so what did you think of the Deepin applications? Did you get to play with those very much?
I did. Okay, let's just ask the question. Has anyone here actually used Deepin, like, as a daily driver at all this week?
No.
Besides me.
No, I mean, I look. One of the first things I look at is if I can use like OBS on it, and I gotta admit, I didn't look at the store to see if they've updated, and that's one of my issues with having Deepin. When I did look at it earlier, they still had version 25 in the software, which you can't do NDI, or, I mean, we're 2+ versions behind now. So I attempted to, I installed Snapd, and I was going to install Martin's, OBS Snap, and got everything installed. Snap was in there, and OBS wouldn't launch.
Yeah, I've actually was thinking I was going to try Snap because the new version of Blender is out. Blender 3 got released today, and I've used it as a Snap before and it works really well. And I was reading about Snap on Deepin, and apparently it's maybe not so great. But the way I got around some of the stuff like Steve's mentioning is Flatpak. So for me, I've just been using Flatpaks for years now, and so even for like Firefox, they have ESR Firefox in their repos, which I really don't. I'd rather just use the more modern version. So I have the Flatpak version of Firefox running, and the Flatpak version of Telegram, and a bunch of other stuff that I normally use. So that's how I got around a lot of the repo issues, because they do, they had a lot of they're going to have all the basic stuff that you would normally find in a distro. But when it comes to maybe newer versions of applications and things like that, if they're not maintaining it in their repositories, then yeah, you're going to have to look somewhere else for it.
They probably have ESR because that's a Debian thing. They ship ESR. They don't ship the latest version.
Right. They'd have to package it themselves. Like that's kind of what I was saying. Like, if they're not going to repackage something and put it in their own repository, then you're going to have to look somewhere else for it, whether it's and I think to me, Flatpak is the most, straightforward line to get, what I want. So it's easy enough to just enable the repository and then just, get whatever you want on there. So
the thing was with the Flatpak, I have problems. I haven't been successful in getting NDI in there.
Okay. Yeah, well, I had some permission things. I mean, Flatpak isn't perfect. You definitely have to. I couldn't get a weird thing. uBlock was crashing in Firefox. Just uBlock. Everything else was fine, but just uBlock kept dying. And I think it's because it was trying to access my local home folder, and it didn't have permissions to do so. So I had to actually use Flat Seal and go through and just set up some permissions. And it's not perfect. There's still some font rendering things I've got to figure out. But yeah, the applications themselves, I mean, the file browser, file manager works well. The one thing that it does that is really annoying that could trip people up is if you turn on hidden files for a particular directory, and then you navigate to a new folder, it keeps shutting itself back off. So you don't realize that. So I was trying to migrate my Firefox profile over from my Ubuntu distro install, and I'm like, I know there's a Mozilla folder here somewhere, and I kept turning on hidden files, and then I'm browsing around, and I'm like, couldn't find it. It didn't dawn on me. Oh, it keeps shutting off hidden files every time I move. It wasn't remembering it per directory either. Like sometimes the file manager will do that. So anyway, you can go into settings and turn it on, and it'll just stay on, and then you can see hidden files everywhere. But until you figure that out, it tripped me up for about a good hour. I wasted on that. So, but other than that, I mean, in terms of just using it to copy files, I noticed it seems a little slow to copy files, lots of files at least. So like the Firefox, the Mozilla profiles, again, is a good example. There are like thousands of little files in there. And it seemed like it took a while, like longer than it normally would to copy on other distros. And I'm not sure if maybe it's doing some sort of like sanity check or some sort of validation as it's copying that adds a little overhead to that, but it definitely took a little longer than normally would in, say, Ubuntu or something like that. So the image viewer, so here's a really cool thing I thought. The image viewer has OCR text recognition baked into it. So if you open an image that has text in it somewhere, and it doesn't have to be a document, it could be anything. I did it with a picture that just happened to have a label in it. And you right click and say, it's like, extract text, I think is what it says. And it does. It'll open a new window, shows you the image, and then shows you the text next to it. It's really slick. I'm like, wow, that's a really cool idea.
What was that application? I didn't try that one.
Just the image viewer. If you open up the image, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And then right click on the image and just use extract text. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
So one of the applications I thought was really cool is the it has like a lot of little creature comforts from mobile devices. I don't know if you noticed that, but the things like the voice recorder, that's just an application, just a simple, the webcam app, just very simple. Just like there's just like creature comforts that you just kind of expect.
The window capture can either be a video or an image, which is pretty cool.
I didn't actually like the window capture one very much because I didn't like how it stole the like it kind of locked you out of your desktop until you kind of start it.
Gotcha.
So I didn't like that as much as like I do others. Now it's probably really actually a good way to go for a most users probably. It just didn't work for me. Like Flame Shot to me is a better user experience because I click on it, then I get it. But if I, just how it worked, and I don't know, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm I
don't agree with you on that one.
I think the capture tool actually waits for you to actually set the actual size of the capture as well, doesn't it, by default?
Well, so if I click it now, and it takes over my mouse, and if I hover over any of the open applications, it gives me a dotted border saying, basically showing like I can take a picture of just this thing.
Oh, that's right. It does.
If I click and drag, then it's going to give me a window, a whatever shot, and then it'll open up the window to take the shot. You can click different options once it's already open. It's kind of nice because it does have a lot of the same tools as Flame Shot does, but you're right, Nate. It's a very different experience the way it does take over the desktop. So
it kind of sounds like the I hate to bring up the word Windows, but it kind of sounds like the Windows snippet tool that they have, the snipping tool that they bring in. Built in.
Kind of, yeah. It's a little. I think it's a little cleaner than that. The UI is a little prettier. I think the way they kind of did the hover and things.
It's prettier, but actually I prefer the snippet.
Yep. A great hidden snip tool that no one ever knew about.
Right.
Because no one ever, it was never surfaced. Like I'd tell someone, could you just take a screenshot of that? And they'd never know how to do it. They're like, well, I'm hitting print screen. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Go to the search and type in snipping. What? That's a thing?
Yeah.
That's something Windows should have put front and center.
Right on the desktop, baby.
They should have put right in the center. Yeah, it's such a handy tool. Like I use it all the time for like showing quick little markups.
Yep.
When I work
or just even if you hit the print screen key and that's what it was, hot link to.
Yeah. See, I use the snipping tool for work all the time because I have to remote into people's machines and capture the error messages that they're getting. If I have to like escalate up to engineering or something like that, depending on what the issue is, so I'll have to, grab it, attach it to the ticket, and then escalate.
The other application I'm really glad they bundled in there, and this is just me because of the things I use, but Simple Scan. I don't know if you've ever used Simple Scan. It's a great, easy to use. It's not very feature rich, but it gets the job done scanning tool, so you can scan documents, off of your multi-function device or scanner or whatever. But it's nice that they included that. But I did notice though because that is a GNOME application. They didn't do anything to try and make it look less GNOME-y compared to the other applications. If you look, the corners are not round; it's very rigid looking, and I guess it's fine, but it's such a contrast to the very, very rounded corners of the rest of Deepin.
That's one thing I haven't used in a long, long time is a printer or a scanner. I don't really have a need for that because any document you make, you can just send it in like an email. Or you can even take a picture of it and send it to Google Drive.
Exactly. I was just going to say my phone, and I have a new Pixel, and it's just built right in now. You take if it sees that it's a document, it does it it looks like a scan instead of a photo. Like it crops it properly, and
And then you can actually import it into different programs and stuff, and it keeps its formatting, so it doesn't get all screwed up because it thinks it's an image.
It's so much easier. The cameras are so powerful now too that the quality is very, very good. I would say probably the quality might be as good, if not better, than a flatbed scanner in some cases.
So very quick interjection.
Sure.
My dragon-in-law Eva still uses a 35mm camera. She gets her rolls developed at a certain camera shop in town. She showed me certain prints or copies that she had got made of a friend of an event we went to. And she said, I'm going to go to Walgreens and get copies made of these, get prints made, so you can send them to your friend. And he goes, no, hand them over. I said, that machine next to you is a scanner. I will copy the image and I will send him the copy. So some people, sometimes that's why I'm glad I still have a scanner.
Yeah, some people just don't. They never continued forward beyond photographic technology. And I've sat and actually tried to explain that to my daughter before. Like there were rolls of film. You had a certain number of shots, and you didn't waste them because you didn't want to pay to get all these pictures developed.
Yeah,
she still's like it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't work.
just because I like to be funny. A few years ago, I was driving a tour bus around just on the weekends, and somebody, when people, the group would hand over like a phone, a camera to take a picture of the group, whatever. I would like, how do you advance the film on this? I would just like very like deadpan ask that question just to see if I could get a rise out of them. And normally they wouldn't even understand what I'm saying at first, but anyway, I did it anyway, just to be obnoxious.
I like their calendar app. I think is quite awesome. The calendar app is really nice. They got events built into it and all that good stuff. So I thought that was pretty handy. One thing I didn't find impressive within Deepin was LibreOffice. Looks like Windows 95.
You are not kidding. Yep.
I don't know what the deal is with that. It is an old Office. It's 6.1.5, I think. So I actually removed their Office and put the LibreOffice Flatpak in, which looks so much better. So it actually brings it up to speed.
That's a good idea. I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I opened it too. I thought, oh my goodness, I haven't seen it look this bad for a couple of years now, at least.
Yeah, I don't, and it's not a Flatpak. I think it's from their repos. I think, but I removed it from apt remove. I think it was LibreOffice Core and Common. I think I removed those two and just installed the Flatpak.
Well, I think like you were saying with Firefox ESR, they are inheriting a certain amount of packages from Debian.
Debian, yeah.
And what Debian is packaging in that branch that they're using, because I don't think they're using Bullseye, right? They're using an older branch.
Use Staple.
Yeah.
So those packages. They were using Bullseye. They're not using Bullseye?
I don't think so.
But even LibreOffice, regardless, if it comes from a repository, never ever looks like that. I don't get that. It's never looked that old.
Well, it could be because they're using the Qt framework and somehow it's not.
Oh, right. So it doesn't. Okay. So they've had to. Yeah, I see. Okay. That's probably why. Yep.
That'd be my guess. So
Bullseye is stable. You mean Bookworm? Bookworm is testing.
Bookworm. Sorry. Yes. They shifted forward on me. Now I'm behind.
Yeah, I did notice that like LibreOffice it does actually look like Windows 95. And that's fine, I guess. It works. I mean,
you mentioned the simplicity though, but I mean, I love like if you open their boot ISO maker, it's just a single window. It says drag an image file here or select in the ISO image file, and you can click and browse if you want, and then you just click next. I mean, it's so simple. I know people. I guess it's a polarizing issue, right? Some people really like simple, and some people like let's say Plasma versus GNOME, right? Some people really want that like Plasma experience where they have a million options and they tailor everything and choose all their settings and all that. And some people really want just give me what I want. Give me what I need to do. I don't need to have a million different options because they just get in my way. And for something as usually straightforward as creating a boot disk or boot USB, I just love the simplicity of some of their apps because of that. It keeps it very clean, and it just works really well.
That was a bootmaker you're talking about?
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't try it at all.
So I just opened LibreOffice. It looks like Word 2033.
Yeah, it's pretty great, isn't it? It's highly contrasting to the rest of the Deepin experience. And I mean, it seems like had they just used like maybe like the latest Plasma stuff, like if they made it more breezy, I think it would have fit in better.
It's probably just a theming thing.
Yeah, but even like the little down arrow things, it looks like Windows 2000, like little drop downs.
In what we're talking about now?
LibreOffice Writer.
Still Lib. Yeah, Esnick's mentioned in chat that it's a toolkit theme issue.
Okay.
Yeah. But the other thing I'd like to mention is their control center, which is their settings. Very simple, very straight to the point, nice big icons that lead you in the direction of where you want to go as far as settings go. I think that's quite a nice, real awesome settings app that is very simplified and just gets you up and running and to the settings that you want really easy. I don't know what you guys think, but I found that really easy to use. And
yeah, so I think that's really nice because it's very simple. I think anyone jumping in could get along with it. Me personally, I prefer something a little more verbose looking. But that's me personally. And so I realize I'm probably not the typical user, especially judging by everything else around here. That's pretty typical, pretty obvious.
It's kind of like what Mark set up with Peppermint 10, the simple.
Well, someone mentioned mobile OS, right? And it definitely has that feeling of like here's your big button overview areas, and then you get down into those different spots, but there's only really just like the relevant settings. There's probably things you can tweak beyond that if you know where to look and how to do it. And I would think that if you were a user that stuck with it, you'd probably maybe read the forums and you'd probably pick up some other things. I mean, there's a lot of settings in GNOME that I use, excuse me, the decomp editor to get at and things like that. Like if you use Ubuntu, for example, their dock, there's no setting. There's very few settings that they've surfaced, but if you dig down into decomp editor, it's just dash to dock. And you can get in there and change all the settings you want. You just have to know where to go and look. And my guess is there's probably ways to do things like that in Deepin as well, just like there's in Windows and Mac and everything else. So,
but I think it's really nicely laid out, though. I mean, I think I was just thinking because I know Huawei's got some Surface-like devices. I don't know if you've seen those. I considered buying one some time ago, but I didn't. But this would be great on that as far as, a Surface-like device where we have to, it's, or one of those like all-in-one multi-user, things that fold around and make a tablet also. Seems like this would be really ideal, real nice setup for that as well.
So this is my new toy.
Oh, hot dang.
So tablet choices are not great on Linux so far, right? We kind of agree about that.
Yep.
So that leaves me with Android or iOS, and I have an iPad that generally once a day I want to throw across the room because iOS 15 it's a dog. It just doesn't run very well. Maybe it'll get better, but for right now, at least it's pretty terrible. And Android tablets and tablet mode on Android is a very distant thought in anyone's mind. Like some of the apps work okay, but and then the hardware is barely better than like phone hardware, and they're not cheap. A decent Galaxy Tab, for example, is $400, $500, $600 more. They go higher than that, and I just got tired of it. So this is a Lenovo Duet Chrome OS. It's a Chromebook technically.
Okay,
but the book part of it is just a pull off cover. So it has the keyboard, but it pops off.
Oh, nice.
So you're left with a really nice tablet and Chrome OS is actually pretty good from a touch perspective, and I have Linux running on it because it has essentially like the Chrome version of Windows subsystem for Linux kind of thing. And so you can have web apps, Android apps, and Linux apps all on the same little device. And yeah, but you're right. Back to the point the point that you made, something like that, a 10-inch tablet with Deepin would probably work fairly well. I don't know if they've even thought of anything. Maybe they have. I don't know.
But Plasma Mobile has come along really quite nicely, but there's still just some things that are a little bit ropey with it. Like the pop-in keyboard is just not like what you would expect on Plasma Mobile still. But I haven't tried any kind of like pop-up keyboard on Deepin, but it just seems like it's real close to just being right there where you need it. Like as far as the interface, especially if you go with the fancier looking, like when you first log in, you can kind of choose how you want your system to look. If you go for the fancy as opposed to the efficient, look.
I love that they call it fashion mode.
Oh, fashion mode. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yes.
Not fancy, fashion. High fashion. That the buttons are bigger on the bottom, and so I think that looks. It's very easy to change back and forth too, so it's really easy to do. But yeah, but it seems like it's poised to be able to be a good, convertible kind of OS. Take the top off or whatever. So
Jason Sierra asked about the Pine Tab, and I think they're getting there, but the hardware is. So what I love what Pine 64 what I love is that they're moving towards better devices. So on their Pine phone, you see they now have a higher tier device that has better specs and probably runs. I don't have either the original or the better one, but I can only imagine that the one that's $300 or $400, whatever it is probably 10 times better than the original one, because the original one was more or less a proof of concept, right? Get something in the hands of developers so they can hack against it, and UB ports and Plasma Mobile and all those projects have real hardware in their hands to play with, instead of hacking around bootloaders and all the nonsense they had to deal with. And the Pine Tab's a lot like that. It works, but it's not going to knock your socks off. And it really, we're sitting here talking about like the apps, the quality of life apps like calendars and notepads and all the different things. And it's all just not quite there yet. I don't know. I'm not an early adopter when it comes to that kind of stuff. I just don't have patience to sit and vlog tickets and like be part of the making the sausage fun. It's just not me.
Adding some spice to the sausage, maybe little bits of apple, for some flavor.
Not me.
It's smoke taste.
When I was a younger man, I love that kind of stuff, but not now.
Well, I got the Pine phone to kind of be part of it, and I did a lot early on with it, and I still have it charged and sitting over there. I kind of switched between the UB ports and OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. No surprise there, and it's actually a lot of fun to work with. And actually, my oldest, he's stolen it many times just to play with it. So I think he likes it, and I think that's something considering he likes to play the mobile games and whatnot. The as far as the application experience, though, I think with the Pine phone, it's just not there yet. It's close, it's getting there, but it's just it's not there yet. So as far as the applications go, did they have what you wanted in the repos on the in Deepin? If you all of a sudden were forced to use Deepin, would you have what you needed?
I mean, I gotta admit, I didn't look at all of them, and I just noticed when I go in there now and looked at OBS, and it was 27.1. It's like so they must be adding some more. I'd have to go through, but I mean, I did see like there's Telegram in there. There's a few other stuff that I didn't see 6 months ago when I looked at one of the other versions in that. I think they've done some work on their browser I noticed a lot more when you select English. There's not a lot of remnant of Chinese left. I know when I looked at it before, also trying to set up the search engine for like Google was a little bit difficult, but it's now a selection in there that makes it easier. So there's quite a few things that I've seen that have been improved in the last, from the last release.
Yeah, I have to say, just going into their software store now, when I looked, probably around the same time frame as you, Steve, maybe 6 months, even maybe a little bit longer, most of the things in there were in Chinese. And now when I look at, the editor's choice are all like OpenShot, GIMP, Typora, Inkscape, Chrome, Telegrams, Sublime Text, like they're all first tier, like normal, not normal. They're all like world apps. Like I think the world open source community apps, whereas a lot of the stuff in there before was like Chinese language only type stuff. So that's very different, because I fully expected to open the store and be like, nothing in here is for me because I can't read Chinese, which is exactly how it used to be. And now it just doesn't seem that way anymore. The apps themselves, I mean, they're not the latest release, which is kind of what you get in a fixed release anyway, which is why I end up using Flatpak most of the time, because I just figure if I want the latest release of something, it's just the easiest path to get it. And so even though they have most of these apps here, a lot like, the Firefox ESR, I'm probably just going to use the Flatpaks anyway. But in answer to your question, yeah, I mean, in this week that I've been using it, I haven't hit any like major roadblocks that I couldn't use it.
I would say most of the applications that I use on a regular basis are in the repos. So Discord, FreeCAD, even LeoCAD, which I figure probably wouldn't be in there. The virtual Lego CAD. Virtual. Yeah, the virtual Legos, you can't step on them, so that's really nice. So, White Chocolate, you want to get in? You want something to add to that?
As far as that goes.
Yeah, just whatever. If you wanted to, I wasn't sure. I heard you unmuted your mic, so I wasn't sure if maybe you wanted to.
Wow, you noticed that?
I have really good headphones. That's not true. They're just decent. In fact, that was part of my problem this evening too. So they had pretty much everything I needed. They didn't have Element in there or Shildy Chat. Actually, what I used for my Element client, my Matrix client, I should say. But adding the Flatpak would be trivial. So, but yeah, as far as like at Discord, they had Telegram, Kden Live, Audacity, everything that I would need seemed to be already there. Now I maybe I missed it, and maybe we talked about it and I just wasn't paying attention. But did we say like what it's based on? I know it's a Debian base, but what is it? Like, is it a latest Ubuntu, or is it based on straight Debian?
It's Debian.
Oh, is it Debian? Okay.
Yeah. I'd have to think it's based on Buster, wouldn't you think? Because there's a lot of old apps in there that it can't be testing, because testing wouldn't have that version of LibreOffice, would it?
Bullseye is stable, and testing is Bookworm. Old stable is Buster.
What I found really weird is I did a search for Simple Screen Recorder in the software center, and it didn't find it. It's finding it now, but what I did was I did a sudo apt install Simple Screen Recorder. It's installed and it's working, but when I go back to the software center, it's showing, it's picking and it's finding Simple Screen Recorder, and it's got the option to install it. So I don't know why I've got it from apt and installed it through terminal, but it's still showing as an install option in their software center. I find that weird, unless they've got their own repos or something. It's very strange.
I think they do have both repos. I haven't actually looked. They don't have a way that I can see graphically to manage repos. So I haven't gone into apt. I haven't gone into like sources.d and looked around.
I'll have a look
to see what's in there. But my guess is they're leaning heavily on the Debian repos, and then they have their own custom. I mean, they kind of have to. They would have to have all of their software published. So
I guess like looking at the settings now, because my well-trained, well, okay, I shouldn't say well-trained. My sort of trained OpenSUSE mind goes to YAST to basically dig into the system to see see the breakdown of things. But maybe I missed it, but I don't see any kind of like a system configuration thingy that kind of tells you about all the beans and bullets, as it were.
Yeah,
of the system.
That's in the control center in system info, I think it is. System info in control center.
Yeah, I guess what I mean though is like the that where you can actually dig in and look at the partitions, look at like any of the graphical tools.
Oh yes, that's disk utility. Is that the one you're talking about? There's a disk utility in there.
Is there a disk utility?
Yeah, it looks like the what do you call it? The GNOME disk utility. I think it's that.
There's a device manager that shows all the different. Gives you the overview of the system itself. I think that's what you're looking for, is the device manager,
or even like system, like all your system services and like seeing all.
Yes, if you hit the power button, and then it's got start system monitor down the bottom.
This one right here.
No. The power button on the panel. If you hit the power button on the panel.
Okay.
Down the bottom, it's got system monitor, start system monitor, just like Windows. Task manager.
Oh, you can see the services there.
Yeah.
I see.
In the sources.list, it's got comstore packages.uniontech.com app store Deepin app store. So it must be their own app store that they're running, I would think.
Yeah. I was also looking for things like the bootloader settings, and it's just me, so it's not huge, but like like with YAST, I can set the with services like boot manually or boot at start at boot or whatever, or start manually, enable all that stuff. I don't think that's.
If you go to general settings all the way at the bottom of the control panel or control center.
General settings.
Settings, there's a boot menu option in there, and you can actually graphically change the boot options, which is actually pretty slick.
Doesn't seem to be as many options as there used to be. I think there used to be more options in that, don't you think? I'm sure.
Well, they switched from that sidebar, where all of the settings were part of that sidebar.
Yeah, that's right. It used to have a bit more settings, I thought.
And I think they did they sort of simplified a little bit.
Well, actually, the actual depiction in there is active. So you can if you click on system setup on that little picture there, the boot menu picture, it actually gives you a you got to put your password in. I don't know what it's going to bring up. Oh no, just by default it brings up system setup instead of Deepin. Okay.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. It took me a second. I had to get there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to mention is the notifications is really nice. Has anyone taken any notice of the notifications?
The one thing that bugs me about the notifications is that the icon doesn't change colors. I'm so used to every system I use has a little notifications icon that is one color when there are none and another color when there are. And this one is always white, and it drives me bananas.
That's a good point, actually. I never thought of that.
Now you'll never unthink it. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Even like a little red dot would be nice or something.
A count, just a little count on the icon, anything. Yeah. Any kind of visual representation of, hey, there's an icon, there's something in here to look at.
And also when you do a screenshot, I suppose if this is cute, if it's cute, when you do a screenshot, it actually sits in the notification and you can actually click view. Have you tried that? I think it's based on Plasma anyway. So Plasma does it anyway, I think. But yeah, you do a screenshot and it sits in there.
I didn't notice that. Now, as far as like maybe any areas you found difficult with Deepin?
I don't think I found anything particularly difficult. I would say just little goofy things. That icon issue, they have a global search thing that by default is triggered by shift and space, which I'm a sloppy enough typist that key combination comes up enough for me when I'm ending a sentence and then hitting shift. So the space isn't quite let up when I hit shift.
Sure.
And so I kept getting that search to pop up and I'm like, what is going on? Why does this keep popping up? And so I went and looked at the shortcut for it and I went, oh, okay, well, so I just changed it to control shift or control space instead of shift space. And it's like it's a global search, kind of like you'd get in, I guess, like, you know, much more like, you know, than it is like Plasma KRunner. So that was just one weird thing. The tooltips, I use dark mode, and I don't know what the deal is, but tooltips in dark mode, the color of the text is gray, and it's really hard to read. And that's just like a dumb thing, but it's an oversight that somebody didn't see it. That's just a sign of dark mode being, I don't know. There's just, you know, people, I guess I'm like in the minority using dark mode. I always think there's no way that's possible, but
I use dark mode all the time.
I guess I would assume most people do now, but I guess maybe not.
Yeah, I can't stand the light mode. It just blinds you. Dark mode and everything.
Yeah, it's dark or nothing.
Eric, you mean the tooltips on the panel or?
Tooltips whenever you're opening an application. So like if you're in, let's see what app. I'd have to find. It's very, very noticeable in a couple different apps, and I'm trying to find one. Of course,
on the apps themselves. Okay.
Yeah, and if you hover over things to get a tooltip, it gives you like a very dark background with then gray text inside of it that you can't really see. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I noticed that the software application doesn't change with the dark mode, I think, right? It's still white.
No, it used to be. So when they first introduced dark mode, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, you had to set it in each application individually, and it was really annoying. And now there's a global dark mode that seems to be respected much more, but you can still applicate, at least in their applications, the first class applications, if you want your file manager to be a different theme, in that little hamburger menu, you just click it and most of their apps will have theme, and then you can pick.
Because I think I set it to dark for the system, and my app whatever manager is still white for me.
Yeah.
Well, the app store is still white. Yeah, you're right. And it doesn't seem like that. Seems like the one app that I've come across that doesn't respect that, or maybe there just isn't a dark mode for it.
So Eric, I replicated the issue. I went to the program called Draw, and the icons down the side have what you described as the gray on black. Yeah.
And it's just really hard to read.
Oh, I can see it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was one other thing. Oh yeah, plugging in headphones. At least the first few times I did it, and I don't know if I can replicate it now. It didn't automatically switch the headphones. It recognized that there were headphones plugged in. So when I went and clicked on the volume icon, it shows headphones and speakers, but it didn't automatically switch to the headphone when I plugged it in. So it was kind of like, that's the only distro I've ever seen that never it just didn't like assume, oh, well, if you plug in headphones, then obviously you want me to switch to that. So anyway, and then that made me think, well, I wonder if they're using still using Pulse, or if they've update. There's a lot about this I just didn't really get too deep into.
Deep into.
Wow.
I found, actually, Eric, I found connecting my mic and getting sound working through the mic was a bit of a pain in the backside as well, to be honest. Had to fiddle around with a couple of toggle switches and whatever. So yeah, that was, I found that was a little bit of an issue as well. Got it working eventually, but yeah, it was just a bit painful.
They seem to be continuing to make strides with each release. I mean, it's like they pick, an area to focus on, and then each release just seems to be better and better.
Yep.
And, given what I've seen in the last year or so, how far they've made it and how many things they've changed. And I guess this is what you see whenever they have, I'm assuming they have a pretty sizable development team that's working on this instead of a community project. These are probably paid developers, for a company that's behind this. So. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's has really nice polish to it, but yeah, there's like little things like that. They like the low contrast for the tooltips. That is a bit of an irritant. And, I don't know, I guess just still some rough edges, maybe a little bit. I think if you start to dig into it, but yeah, I think they've definitely made some strides. Like the first time I used Deepin to the second time to now, you can see that there's been a lot of time and effort that's going into the overall user experience. And now I think I don't recall who it was in the chat that said this, but and I want to compare it to the Ubuntu DDE and see see if maybe they have a different, they worked some of those things out, and I wonder how cooperative those different communities would be. Because it would be nice to have a more updated packages that you would get on the Ubuntu as opposed to the what you get on Debian. Although with Flatpak, I think that kind of mitigates a lot of those issues. I didn't try snaps on Deepin. Did anybody here try snaps to see?
I tried to get the OBS snap rolling and get it. I got snap installed, the core install, all that, and it shows it actually, because one of the problems in Deepin, not Deepin, in Debian 10, I think 11, that the snaps don't show up in the menu. It actually did show up, but you click on it and you get the little revolving, and then it disappears and nothing comes up.
Well, I wonder if that's a similar problem to Flatpak, because I had problems installing Flatpak. I had to set permissions to the temp folder and the var temp folder. Otherwise, it would install, but it wouldn't run. You click on it in the menu and it wouldn't run. And then I started installing with sudo, and it installed, but then you had to run it with sudo because you're not supposed to do Flatpaks with sudo anyway.
Right.
But then I did a bit of a search on the internet and found that somebody mentioned that they had the chi mod with 1.777 in the temp and the var temp, and now that's all working fine. So Flatpaks install no problem. So I don't know what the issue is there, but obviously you didn't have that issue, Eric, because you use it.
No, I really didn't. I just followed the instructions that were on flathub.org. Yeah.
Maybe it's the way I've got my script set up. Maybe that's causing issues. I should check that out.
Could be. Yeah, I just followed their instructions, which were the standard, just as sudo apt install Flatpak and then add the repo and restart. Yeah, that's
all I did pretty much. I don't know. Strange.
So Nate, you mentioned the same. I was actually thinking the same exact thing. Probably about an hour before the show, I was thinking like, what is the state of Ubuntu DDE? And because I think I would probably feel a little more confident running this on an Ubuntu base and having it be something that's a little, I guess, closer to something I'm used to. I'm not saying that this is you know, I think if I were to have problems, so I briefly looked into Snapd, and so what Steve was saying is true. There just appear to be issues with Snap, but like, you know, the only resource I would have is their forum, and they just have such a small user base. I think outside of China right now, at least, you know, maybe that'll grow over time and it'll change. But I mean, I don't feel confident that I would be able to find help for an issue as easily as I would for something like Ubuntu DDE or, you know, Manjaro had a Deepin edition. I don't know if they're going to bring that back or not, or if it is back, but it had been pulled for a while. You know, those having the DDE, Deepin desktop environment, on a different base, I think, you know, if I could do something like that, I would probably be more apt to run it long term. Whereas this has been fun to do, and I'm interested in doing it and seeing if I can fix a couple of the little things I've worked on. But I don't know that I'm going to stay on Deepin for those reasons.
Yeah, I had looked at Ubuntu DDE about the same time that I looked at regular Deepin to see the difference in that. And instead of using like a Chromium browser or a customized, it was still Firefox. The theming, you know, going with the Deepin theming, and it just didn't particularly look right. I know there was a couple other things that I can't remember right now that were kind of different off of it. I would be interested to see what Manjaro has done with their DDE.
Yeah, well, I think the only thing you're giving up really is is the App Center, isn't it? That's the only thing that would be different with a different base. Is the App Center. Yeah,
DDE also, they had you know, of course they had the Ubuntu store.
Yeah, so that would be interesting to see actually, because you have a lot more, and I think what Eric's trying to say is the flexibility is a lot more on an Ubuntu base, because you have the ability to install the latest applications probably without Flatpak, right? So they'd be a little bit more up to date, and you're not using the Deepin repository either. So you've got that greater flexibility, I suppose, on an Ubuntu base or even a Manjaro base. So I can see there'd be a bit of a difference there.
No, I think as long as I can have properly working Flatpak and properly working snaps and app images, I think it'd be fine regardless, because a lot of the edge case applications are usually available in some sort of universal package. So, because I was looking at the versions, just because I actually didn't think to look at the versions until I think Steve said something about it, or somebody said something about it. But yeah, the LeoCAD, that's like 3 years behind, so that's kind of not cool. I mean, I guess it's fine, but they've done a lot of work in the last 3 years, so having an older set of packages does seem a little bit, I don't know, unfortunate.
Yes, I agree. It's unfortunate because even the LibreOffice just looks so out of place with the amount of work they've done with the desktop itself,
right,
to make it look so nice, and then have that version of LibreOffice in there. It's just, it sticks out like a sore thumb, to be honest, and that's unfortunate.
I think that makes a good case for maybe moving. I'm not saying we should, but it makes a case for, not saying we should, moving more applications to things like Flatpak and and snaps, because it does make it, I'd say easier. I don't know if that's the right word, but for distributions to use whatever base they want, like Debian, because it does have its stability thing going for it, and then you'd be able to use whatever modern applications you want on top of it. So there is a case that could be made for those universal packages, for sure.
Well, that's my case. I mean, I feel like I could run in answer to your earlier question, can you run this? I feel like I could run almost anything that it would allow me access to Flatpak and or Snap or some combination of the two, because the base is, let's just we're abstracting layers here. The base is what the distro is really responsible for. The nuts and bolts is it going to install and run on my hardware? Do I have the right drivers? Does all of that sort of work? And then the user applications could be, and this is kind of what GNOME's already doing is kind of moving towards Flatpak for most of their, utility type applications, the calculator and the file manager. It's like stuff like that really, again, those small applications that do just one thing. That's a perfect example of where you could put those types of things, and then you don't have to. And Ubuntu is doing that with snaps, and obviously it's great because I read today for Blender 3.0. If you want to try it and you're on Ubuntu 16.04 and newer, you can install the snap and it works exactly the same on a 16.04 desktop as it would on a 21.04 desktop, which is pretty cool, right?
Mm-hmm. I'd like to elaborate on that because these two scripts that I've written that I was talking about before, one for Arch and one for Debian/Ubuntu, they're Flatpaks that I've over time realized that gives me stability with the application that I use, especially OBS, Kdenlive, even Cherry Tree that I use a lot. There's a few applications in there that I can constantly use as a Flatpak. So no matter whether I decide to go to Debian, Buster or Bullseye or whatever the latest stable is, I think is Bullseye, or whether I go to Arch, if I consistently use these applications on any base, I've got the same application and I know it's going to work because it's a Flatpak. So I've been thinking about this for quite a while, and I'm getting right into the Flatpaks. I find them a little bit easier to use. Plus, they work for me. They probably don't work for everybody, but I find that they do the job that I need them to do. And whether I decide to switch to Arch or Debian, they are completely different because Arch, everything's rolling, it's up to date. Debian's a little bit behind. So you find that middle ground with these Flatpaks, and the ones that work for me anyway is going to be consistent in use. And that's the reason why I've done that.
Makes
there
sense.
was a real interesting interview on Linux, the Linux Unplugged with Chris. They had the developer from, sorry, old timer moment. The one distro that this all has all Flatpaks, and it was brought up.
Nutrix?
Pardon? Not Nitrix, Endless. I'm sorry, Endless. It was
Endless.
I had too many E's coming in my head. I couldn't think of the right one. But Endless is using all Flatpaks, and there's if you want a decent explanation of what Flatpaks, and because everybody goes, oh, they're just so large, and they pull down so much. You got duplicate stuff. And the way he explains it, it really doesn't. It's like your first Flatpak brings down a ton of stuff, but then the second Flatpak we'll see that first Flatpak and not bring down as much. Right. So, but how stable, going back to the stable part, how stable it is using, that type of application.
I have to give them credit. I've been using Flatpaks for at least 2 years, and I literally cannot think. Like, I've had a couple issues where I remember there was a mind mapping, like Xmind, where for some reason the developer released it without access to any kind of storage. And so, like, if you were to use the application and then try to save your work, you couldn't do it because there was no storage. And that's just a dumb oversight. And like, that's not Flatpak's fault. That was the developer's fault. But I'm struggling to think of any time where I've had like the underpinnings of Flatpak just blow up on me. Because again, I've been on that Ubuntu system for 4 successive releases now, and that's the same. I'm bringing all those Flatpaks forward with me. I haven't done anything different, and I just run Flatpak update every so often, and nothing ever breaks. And we find some wood because I'm sure I'll find a way to break it now that I've said something. But no, it's really been extremely reliable. And it does. I completely agree with what Colin's saying. It levels the field where it just doesn't matter anymore. Because in the past, like it was a hassle. Like if it wasn't in your repo, you had to go get it from somewhere else and shoehorn it in. And then and then how do you deal with updates? And how do you deal with, and then it gets messy and ugly. And then, you can't bring it forward with an update because it's not part of the repository. And like, just none of that exists anymore whenever you use these universal package formats. So I use a lot of app images too. We haven't mentioned it, but app images are great as well because I use a lot of those.
So I was gonna go back to what Steve said. Yeah, they share libraries, the applications on Flatpak. So the more you use Flatpak, the better it is because they should share more libraries that way versus just using one-off application. I was gonna mention what as Nick said on the chat that he confirmed that the LibreOffice version is coming from Debian 10, old stable, not current stable. Buster.
It makes me think of like still versus I forget what the nomenclature is now. It was like still versus fresh or something like that for the two.
Yeah.
They call it old stable and stable, and then testing.
No, not for Debian. For on I think it's on Arch. Whenever you install OpenOffice, you can pick whether you're on still or fresh. It's
yeah. There's two different ones. You're right.
Oh yeah, on the main LibreOffice webpage, there's like two options. One is like the community version, and the other one's like the enterprise recommended version or something that.
No, it's they literally call it LibreOffice Fresh and LibreOffice Still or something like that. It's two separate divergent, and you can choose whether you want the Still, which is like the LTS version, or the Fresh, which is like whatever the latest release is.
Well, I want to kind of wrap this thing up here and get on to what our next distribution is going to be. So some final thoughts. Why should somebody give it a spin? I can kind of think of some reasons already, but I want to hear from people in the panel here what they think. If you're to sell like the elevator pitch, see a guy in an elevator and some random stranger says, hey, what I heard about this Deepin. Why should I try it? What would you say to this random fellow or lady in the elevator?
They make their own desktop environment, so that's different from most other distros.
Okay, so it's truly something unique that as far as desktop environment, not just a rinse and repeat from that maybe other distributions are doing.
I think that's any distro that makes their own desktop environment is kind of interesting to me, because it's a full stack, approach where you're basically handling everything that the user sees. Whereas, there's a lot of distributions that do interesting things with packaging or with their utilities. Like look at EndeavorOS is a great example. They don't do very much in terms of upstream from Arch. They are just a utility to more or less let you get up and running. And they do have some of their own utilities, and that those are niceties and those are things that you can use to control your system. But by and large, they're just using someone else's packages and work and stuff. Now there's a great community around it and there's all the positive there, but that's a much different approach than something like Linux Mint or Deepin or any of the distributions that have created their own desktop. So that's an interesting part. And then, like DistroTube's video earlier said, in his opinion, it's the prettiest desktop and way better than, this new effort by Windows, with Windows 11 and stuff like that. So it's a very intentionally pretty looking desktop. They invest a lot of effort into making it look good, and it pays off, which is it's sometimes in the open source community, the UI is sort of one of the last Considerations. The functionality is more maybe central, and they seem to be sort of, at least not maybe completely flipping that script, but they're definitely putting a high price on or high priority on making things look really nice.
Yeah, Leviticus said, you know, it's iCandy, but now it's iCandy that's starting to work really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'd have to tell somebody that, look, if you're looking for an operating system to use and you're used to Windows, there's one that's very similar to Windows, looks as nice as Windows, its functionality is just as simple as Windows, and you'd probably find it works just as good in a different way.
For sure. Yeah, maybe it's some good reasons. I don't have anything else that I want to add to that.
I just wanted to mention the EULA and the privacy policy. The EULA, it almost reminds me of those ethical licenses for software. The way it says that it doesn't let you publish, deliver, transmit, or store any content that contravenes the laws and regulations belonging to your country where the user resides, or threatens the social security, social stability, or anything that is inappropriate, insulting, defamatory, obscene, violent, and against the laws, regulations, policies belongs to the country where the user resides. So that's just one. There's several clauses to the EULA, and the private policy is very extensive, and it says many different ways in which your personal information can be shared.
Yeah, and again, that's, I think, whenever I think of like running this long term, you know, how comfortable am I with it being, you know, me using this for all of the things that I do on a computer long term. And that's one of the reasons that I think I'd be more comfortable on Ubuntu DDE or Manjaro Deepin or something like that, just simply because I have a greater trust for them.
Mm-hmm.
But that EULA is for the operating system, isn't it? It's not for the desktop environment, right?
Yeah,
so you wouldn't get that. Yes.
Since this, I think the distro's GPL, you can just recompile it if you want, and then it wouldn't apply because the GPL it doesn't apply to that. It's only the finished product, kind of like VS Code and VS Codium, kind of like that. If you know what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm. I know what you
mean. But yeah, that's one way you can circumvent that.
Well, I will say that if it takes me longer than 5 minutes, and I'm a pretty fast reader, if it takes me longer than 5 minutes to go through a EULA, I get a little nervous. So that's just me personally. And actually, one time I spent considerable amount of time actually reading through the Microsoft Windows EULA, and that was pretty painful. But this privacy policy, I think, rivals what Microsoft does as far as the length. And that, it's like, you know, I mean, why? That would gives me pause. You know, like the OpenSUSE EULA is very straightforward. It doesn't have any
simple.
Very simple. I'm going to say Fedora's is also very simple, you know. But this, I don't know, just gives me a little bit of a, not sure. So
I think that could be the difference. Well, that's a reflection of that, but I think it's also a reflection of being a product put forth by a corporate entity versus, you know, you're mentioning projects, you know, a project versus a product.
A product. Yeah, that could be. What are you going to say, Steve?
No, just consider the country where it's from.
Sure, it is.
On that note, one thing we didn't talk about was the community, which I don't know. I don't know how the Deepin community works, the forums, how international it is. On that, if somebody asked me, I've heard a Deepin, do you recommend it? I said, well, it is a good, stable Debian base, has a good UI, but I'm going to be honest here and say, go try MX Linux instead, because of the community. So
I agree. I mean, technology is one thing, but sometimes you just don't have the answers yourself, and you got to have a good community that can help you walk your way through it. So, It's just that's just the reality of it. Is as much of an expert as you want to be in anything.
Yeah.
There's just going to be something you're just not going to know. I mean, I've had to use Eric more times than I can use myself to answer a question because he just happens to know it. But
like if you go in to seek help, yeah, I mean, again, most of the user base is in China, which makes sense. That's their core market. That's who they're developing it for. All of the sections of the forum have an English tag as well as the Chinese characters, but the most of the posts, if you go in and actually try to read, it's almost entirely in Chinese. So
if I told my neighbor from Kentucky to go to that site, they'd probably be scared off.
Oh, guaranteed. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why they'll probably never gain a significant market share outside of China. And that's okay, because there are lots of distributions that do very well in a home country, something that's in Portuguese, something that's in, and they just are not big outside. Sparky Linux is a Polish Linux distribution.
Yeah.
Hugely popular in Poland. And there are some people here that use it, but I mean, it's just not going to be as popular because it's not built with this community in mind,
Right.
And to be fair, the English language owns most of the world. Even foreign countries where it's not the first language, a lot of people, I mean, this is an example of that. We have so many people that have come in here from lots of different places, and most people around the world speak English, and so that's sort of the universal language. It's okay that there's a distro that's in Chinese and is for Chinese people. That's
right.
That's fine.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think the big question is putting the Deepin Chinese market aside, the desktop itself, if you was to put on another base, would you use it on a daily basis, and would you think it's okay to use? I think that's the question as well, isn't it?
I didn't before, but honestly, trying it this time, I think it's gotten close enough that yes, I probably could.
I think so too.
I'd still stick with Plasma because it's more tuned to me. This isn't really tuned to me, but it's nice. I mean, I have no complaint. As far as user experience, I think it's very spot on, but it just doesn't. It's just little nitnoid things like it's not dark mode friendly. The cohesiveness between the different toolkits hasn't been thought of as well. So GTK apps look like GTK apps because they're very different. Little things like that. It's not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker, but if I'm comparing the two, which one suits me, I'm say Plasma would probably still suit me better. But I mean, it's the same toolkit, and I'd like to see I like competition, so I like that it's there. It gives the other DEs a something to see as a thing to as competition.
It's like the argument where some people will be like, oh, well, that's the problem with Linux is all this fragmentation because there's so many distributions, except that different distributions have different ideas that contribute back to the upstream projects. And so, they're important because it's important that people express themselves with software and
it's an art.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, I honestly, all arguments aside, I truly believe everything just about is an art form. And so I think you have to be able to express yourself artistically. And if it means that we don't get to something perfect a little bit as quickly, I think that's fine. Because I think it's better for people to express themselves and to be free in how they express themselves than I think it is to have the most perfect product, which a perfect product probably won't work for me anyway. So what does it matter? Because I'm not perfect. My name's not Steve. So on that, it's true. It's not. On that, we have to pick a distribution for next week. How do you feel about Endeavor OS?
It's fine with me. They just had a release, yeah.
Yep. and I figure rather than to cut to the chase on this one, because there's a bit of news I do want to get to, since Adam is here and hopefully he's still alive, hasn't fallen asleep on me. But I'll go into it anyway, even if he's not really here. If he's like,
He's there.
Okay, I wasn't sure if like he was outside with McGee, like going to the park and
we should have.
Yeah, you should have. Yeah, it's probably more fun. Okay, so Endeavor OS it is for next week, and I want to get to this Phoronix article that I saw today. I don't know if you've seen it, Adam. I'm going to put it in the chat, and in the chat. But it says more BattlEye protected games now working with Steam Play on Linux. Did you see that?
I have not.
So the current list of BattlEye games working under Steam Play includes, now these are games I don't really know, but Mountain Blade 2, Bannerlord, Ark, Survival Evolved, Arma 3, DayZ. That seems like something that you might know, DayZ.
So, but wait, BattlEye is the anti-cheat thing, right?
Yes, yeah, I'm
Okay,
sorry. It's the anti-cheat. Sorry, yep. And it does. So what they're saying is, it still does require the intervention of the game studio to request support to be enabled for the particular game, but it does see that anti-cheat software is for Linux is becoming more used by the different vendor houses, different software houses, I should say. So also something called Unturned and Planet Side 2. So it looks like it's gaining more steam, as it were. And I know with the Q1 release of the deck, it looks like Valve might actually get their wish on this. So I don't know if what your thoughts are for the.
So there's a pretty big game missing from that list that a lot of people play on Steam, and that's Destiny 2. It's a pretty big list, a pretty big game. If they can't get that on there, that's going to be a bit of a problem for thousands of people.
Sure.
Assuming, they give a crap about the Steam Deck. What's interesting to me is that Ark Survival Evolved has or had, I'm not sure if it's still supported, a native Linux version. It ran like complete and utter garbage. But so a lot of people were saying that just run it under Proton because it ran better than the native port. So this is kind of neat to see that implemented into the Proton. Arma 3, I think, had like a beta version or alpha version that was a Linux native as well. But again, that it was buggy and whatnot. So it's kind of nice to see that you could just bypass all of that and go straight to Proton to get the game now.
Mm-hmm. So, my guess is if these which game is it you said that they're working on? I mean, I'm not a AAA title player. Nothing I play is cool.
I'm not sure the question is.
The one that you said
the Destiny 2. He's saying
the
that
Destiny 2. Okay.
Yeah. So that I'm not sure that if they're working on it or not, but that would be a big game that runs BattlEye. That would be a big thing. But it's really not that useful because I don't really anticipate the Steam Deck running Destiny 2 very well.
Oh, so, sure.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see that. I think my guess is also that the big games are probably going to be announced closer to launch because if anything I know about if I know anything about marketing and how marketing firms like to do things, they like to build the hype right before the release, and so it's probably going to be it'd probably come later anyway, if it does come at all. But
yeah. And I'm sure Valve would love nothing more than for every BattlEye and easy anti-cheat game to work.
No, they said 100% of the library, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Tall order there, Steam. Tall order.
It is a tall order. But the Steam Deck by itself is a tall order as well, as far as I'm concerned. So
another one is PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Now, it's not really that important on the Steam Deck. Again, the Steam Deck would be way too underpowered to run that game. But getting that in Proton would be kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Well, we're at time. I have unfortunately have something I have to take care of. So, let's go one last word for everybody, and we'll close it out. So, Steve.
Nate. As always, thanks for doing this, picking this up, and giving us all a chance to have fun on a Saturday night or afternoon or morning, wherever they are.
Yeah, whichever.
And it's nice to see Terry joining the group.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you being here, Steve. Keep me humble, you know. So I think that's important. And bless you, whoever that was. So I'll make sure that. But yeah, so I appreciate you you being here, and yeah, something I never thought I would take on is something like Biddle. Like that was never in the cards for me. Had zero interest in doing that when I started playing with Biddle. So, but anyway, so thanks for being here, Steve, and we'll see you next time, and tomorrow morning. You doing it tomorrow morning?
Yes, I am.
So excellent. So that's.
I don't know how awake I'll be, but I'll be here.
You'll be fine. You're young yet. Eris, last word.
Thank you very much for the show. I just wanted to mention that I put in the last time in the pinned message that hashtag Deepin 2021, just so we can follow the conversation with the distro, because there's a lot of messages in Telegram. So I'll probably put the same thing, hashtag Endeavor 2021.
Excellent.
And if you want to continue the conversation, follow us on Telegram, t.mee/Big Daddy Linux Live.
Excellent. I do appreciate you picking up a lot of my slack, Eris. It's been great. Tell you what, it's been really great. So thank you so much. Jinda, last word.
Okay, guys. Thanks again for everybody for coming. Thanks for putting up with me, and thanks for teaching me something again. And I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, this week you're really pushing it, Jinda.
Yeah,
almost had to boot you. I'm kidding. No, it's not.
No, yeah, I can see why.
So thanks for being here. Appreciate it. White chocolate, Terry. Last word, if you want.
Okay, I'll thank you, Nate, and I thank Steve. And I love Linux, and I love this Linux community.
Well, I love having you here. It's nice to have you for your first time in the show, and great to have you in the chat also. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks.
Peter, last word.
Well, the world has been turned upside down in many ways over the last couple of years, but Biddle is a staple for all of us, and I look forward to it every week.
Me too, and I'm glad you're here, Peter, because there were a couple of weeks you weren't here, and that made me a little bit sad and longing. I did tell you, I have to admit, I did cry myself to sleep a couple times because you weren't here. So
Steve said the same thing.
Well, he always does that though.
But I cry when he's here. So.
Oh, okay. Eric, last word.
Thank you, Nate, for putting this on. I appreciate it, and thank you for picking good distros to test. This is fun. I haven't had a reason to try distros for a while, and I enjoyed my time with Deepin, and I'm looking forward to trying Endeavor and coming back next week and seeing everybody again.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's fun to have you here because you are a wealth of knowledge, my friend. Colin, last word.
Thanks, Nate, for putting this on, and Aris, you're always doing stuff in the background. It's good stuff. It's always enjoyable to come here and talk about the things that we try out. So we'll be trying Endeavor next week, so we'll see how that goes. And
should be fun.
Should be fun. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great week. Take care. See you next week.
Well, thanks again for being here, Colin. I look forward to PCTLCOS. We'll be trying that maybe January. Maybe?
Yeah.
All right, no pressure.
Putting pressure on me now, are you?
Nope. No pressure, just a little bit. So this way we can have you on and we can tear you apart and tell you how poo-poo it is. I'm totally kidding.
Yeah, challenge. That could be an exploration, couldn't it?
It could. I mean, if nothing else, it'll be fun. I mean, it'd be nice, side trip. So just think about it. Think about it. You've been talking about it
That'll
quite a bit.
probably be one Biddle I don't turn up to.
No, we're not mean. We would tear apart your Lego set and have a good old time with it.
Oh boy.
Well, thanks again for being here and everything. Jason, last word.
Well, again, thank you for putting on taking over Biddle and giving us this lug to be able to talk about things. And Eric, thank you for the use of the Zoom. It's been great. Got to have that to be able to make this work. So appreciate that. And it's just great to be able to hang out with you guys and be back again for 2 weeks in a row or whatever it is. Yay.
Excellent. 3's a charm. Remember that. All right. And Adam, last word.
Thanks for putting this on, guys. It's a good time. Nice to just sit here and listen, I guess, but it's fun. I enjoy it.
I always like to include the gaming piece of it because I only know a little bit, like just enough to make me a half-wit, and so I'm more of a dim-wit when it comes to gaming. What am I saying? And it's nice to have you here to kind of keep me learning, I guess.
I try.
It makes me feel good to know that Adam is entertained.
Yes, me too. I didn't hear him snore at all, so I think we did okay.
Well, I was muted, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, with that, I'm gonna DL and extend. The episode that's coming out on Wednesday. We're doing the Fedora live streaming compatibility initiatives that are started and kind of the significance that we see in that. And also for more things on me, you can go to keepitwithnate.com. I did actually release another episode of my noodlings for the first time since October or September. I can't remember now. But things just kind of went sideways on me for my life. So there you go. That's what happens. So I want to thank you all for joining in both the Zoom meeting and in the YouTube stream. I want to thank Rocco once again for starting the Biddle community. Eric once again for using his Zoom account, even when I screw it up and just make everything kind of go to crap. So that's entirely my fault, Eric. I hope I didn't cause any additional gray hairs for you. And I'd like to thank everybody involved in making Linux and open source possible. That's everyone in the community, all the developers, the package maintainers, everybody, because you really help us put personal back into personal computer. Until next time, see yous.
Bye, everybody.
Colin's got the double hands.